I'm very pleased to announce and present Martin. Martin's going to be telling us today about getting rid of those nasty exec resources and moving to types and providers. He also told me he is going to prove Luke wrong at least once in his talk, so should be entertaining. So, hand for Martin.
Thank you. Yeah, 50% of the talk already done, so yeah, thank you for introducing. I hope everybody enjoys the conference so far. You learned new things. And I want to use this occasion for saying a huge, big thank you for all the people in the red shirts for such a great organization around here. Thank you. So end of last year, I got informed that Luke is going to visit Berlin. And I made a note on our Puppet user group in Berlin and told them, hey, Luke is showing up. We will meet together at a bar and we will have some drinks, some food, and have conversations. And I tried to get hand on Luke and ask him, okay, Luke, when are you going to deprecate the exec resource type? And at that moment, you could easily look at Luke and you immediately saw him. He thought about, okay, this guy is crazy. Yes, he's true, I'm crazy. That's not a problem. I asked him, okay, why do you still have the exec resource type? And he said two things. The first thing I will show up later in the slides. And the second thing was that Luke mentioned, we did types and providers too difficult. And it took me a couple of days, weeks to dig through what Luke said. And I said, for myself, I said, no, it's not the problem that types and providers are made too difficult. It's just they are explained in a way that they are difficult to understand. And that is the reason why I said, I want to Luke prove being wrong when he said they are too difficult. So my name is Martin. I'm the co-founder of Example42. So don't say thank you for the modules to me. Pass that on to Alessandro, please. I joined far more later. So for people who did start Puppet 3 years ago, you might know Example42 for the modules. Prior there was the Module Forge. We are now a company located in Berlin, so we do not only open source where you don't get money for, we try to get some money. And we do Puppet trainings, and we support Puppet when it comes to enterprise customers and they need specific consulting. So, as I had on the first slide, it's not really a talk, it's a story. So a story that really happened, and the story was that we have been asked to, hey, we have a solution around here and we want to automate it. So this is what I mentioned in the abstract. So the tool is clear, which is to use. So in this case, it's OpenNebula and make it automatic configurable with Puppet. And yeah, everything should be done via an automation tool. In this case, is Puppet. And so we did not start right away writing a module by our own. I hope nobody does that. You first check for something available on the Forge, on GitHub, on Example42. Everything's fine. You check whether there is something already available. That was back when we had the PuppetConf at the Fairmont Hotel. I suppose it's 3 years ago. And I found a module on the Forge. It was maintained by Puppet. Well, it wasn't really maintained, but it was uploaded by Puppet. And I asked the author during the conference, hey, Ken, I saw your module regarding OpenNebula, but it's not in the way that we could really make use of it. And he just said, oh, this is just a, yeah, no, I started in the wrong pattern. Start from scratch is the best thing you can do. Okay, this was now the reason where we decided, okay, we will start writing a module for managing that application by ourselves. Just to get you a rough, short understanding is, well, how does OpenNebula work? You have a central system where you put in everything you want to configure within your private cloud management. So you configure data stores, networks, templates, VMs, images, and everything is done from a central point. And you can do that via two different possibilities. The first one is you use command line utilities. The second one is you use a web interface. Both tools interact with an XML RPC interface in the backend. So I started working on that, trying to support a colleague getting VMs migrated from an old location to a new location. This was partly automated, and well, people tend to say this is a POC. Please don't keep in POC. Think about in POC being a proof of concept. You can also say it's a pile of crap. It was, well, really bad Puppet code. It was fast written, untested, just checking whether can we automate the stuff at all. And then another team took over and saying, yeah, okay, this is nice what we have over here. We just need to configure automated stuff, some artifacts inside that application. For example, the network. And they started doing this with exec resource types. And the first thing I want to know, who is using exec resource types here in the audience? That's almost everybody. Who's using the exec resource types for not running commands one only, but for managing something like an application? That's a far more lower number. Thank you for being here. I hope I can help you. So what is it that we had? So they learned, okay, we have a command, it has an option, and we can provide a configuration file. And yeah, we use exec, and we rely upon not run the exec only in case that the configuration file changes. So we get everything inside. Yeah, but to be honest, yeah, you can do that. Yes, you can change a tire on a car running at 160 miles per hour, but is this reasonable? That's the big question. So the question is, what is an exec resource type in the first case? So the first case, an exec resource type is there for run one-time commands. Yeah, it can deal with changes with this ugly refresh-only parameter you can provide. In our case, we had the problem, we had one configuration file where all, for example, virtual networks that we need to provide were put into one file. But what if you remove or change a network? Well, it wouldn't fetch up by the application because it sees, oh, the network with that name already exists, everything's fine. Yeah, we changed something. We removed something. The application was not aware, okay, how to remove something. So this was the point where we say, okay, dig further into the exec resource type. What is it? Other way around, I'm sorry. So first case, exec opens you a root shell with an empty environment. So you have to take care on everything. It's a root shell. It gives you great power, and it forces you having been great responsible with what you're doing. And the best term I heard from Luke, this is the term I'm fully agreeing with, an exec resource type definitely is an emergency exit. What happens when you open an emergency exit? A bell, an alarm rises up, the fire brigade will show up, there's ambulance, there's police. So there's lots of hassle around, people leaving the building because the alarm rose up. How many emergency exits have you opened via an exec? More than 5, more than 10? Oh my God, everything's on fire. Horrible. That's not really nice. So what you want to do with an exec, definitely, is something like a run once. I can't do it on another way. So this is your emergency exit. I say, I run a command once, maybe I change the directory, and I should take sure that it will never, ever run again, because it's meant to be running one time only. So the people I'm working with, they learned, oh, we can't change networks by now. We need to find another solution. How can we change existing networks, delete existing networks, start networks, stop networks, restart networks? Wait, start, stop, restart? We could put that into a defined resource type because we need to configure individual artifacts. So we have multiple networks that we need to configure. When we want to configure something multiple times, we either have a resource type or we define one by ourselves, so we can iterate over the title. So they started following the file service pattern. Package was no longer required. That was already there. But they wanted to have something like, we reuse the service resource type for starting, stopping, and changing networks. They thought about like, okay, we have solved the problems with changes, and we have solved the problems with being idempotent by using defines. And we just iterate over some data that are delivered by a Hira, for example. So they started doing code. Doing code like a defined resource type, where they say, we have a configuration file, we have an init script, and we have the service. And in case that something changes, we will, well, what does a service do? It mentions over there, has restart true. So it's restarting. What does that mean? What does it mean to use a service? I hope you all check for your services that the services have a restart option, have a status option, so that Puppet can easily deal with. So it was possible for managing individual config artifacts. But how does it do that? It stops the network, it starts the network. So this is something I would like to call destructive configuration management. You first kill someone, and then you give him birth again. Oh, I just wanted the hair to have another color. Could have gone somewhere where they can colorize hair. That would be far more easy. On the other hand, what was this init script they provided there? It was the content of the exec resource they had done priorly. Yeah, okay, they now have a non-empty environment root shell. But we want to get rid of that exec. We don't like that. We don't like destructive configuration management. One question to the audience: who is familiar with the KISS principle? That's almost everybody. Okay, so when I started working as a system engineer, system administrator, Stone Ages, forget about it. So everybody told me, okay, please do everything as simple as possible so everybody understands what's happening, why it is happening. So that was the keep it simple, stupid, keep it stupid, simple, keep it silly, simple, whatever extension for the abbreviation you'd like to have. When it comes to Puppet, I often see so many hard to understand code, a code base where I think, oh, what the hell has this author meant with this Puppet code? He's no longer following the KISS principle. He's done something, he's hiding stuff, he's preventing other new, fresh users from understanding the stuff. So please do yourself a favor. There's in parallel talk. Maybe you want to see the recording about style guides, for example. Style guide and principles. So please start to KISS Puppet and just make Puppet as easy to understand like you would do it normally in a manual way. So we learned by restarting the network what has happened. Destructive configuration management. There have been IP addresses in use, and the tool didn't check whether there are IP addresses in use. And you restart the network, and now it's again available for this VM management solution. And what is it that you have? You have it assumes that there is no single IP in use, and it starts providing IP addresses from its reconfigured state. Yeah, production was very happy. Duplicate IP address is the best load balancing thing you can have. So you say, okay, what is it that we did wrong? We did destructive configuration management. What is it that we should have done in the first place? We should have followed the pattern and the concept of Puppet, its core elements, and that is custom resource types and providers. Who believes that custom resource types and providers are difficult? Okay, let's do a cross-check. Who thinks they are easy? One or two people only. We don't need you here. You know it already. Okay, the first thing is, what is it that we want to have? What is the benefit of having custom resource types and providers? Why do we want them? Custom resource types and providers have the core element of Puppet being idempotent, which means first check whether a certain state is already there, and if a certain parameter or property is not set properly, change only that certain property and don't kill everything and give it birth again. The next thing you can do with it, you can prefetch all information which are on all configuration artifacts which are on a system. Just, for example, the Puppet resource user command. It will give you a list of all users that are available on the system. So how can you do that with defined resource types? Impossible, because you don't make the concept of types and providers. So we thought about, okay, how can we do this now and fixing the issues we had with the formerly solutions. No, not really solutions, things. We want to have something like a data structure. This is where we put the data inside, and we want to make use of these data and make them as usable, as easy as possible, so everybody understands what is happening here. So this is the data part where we say we have some networks, we have a specific model, we have an IP start, and we have a size. So this was the way how this tool needed the information. There's more information needed, but that's just a short summary of it. And then you can go head over to the Puppet code, and now you can consume these data. And you can consume these data by somehow having a resource type available and pass the information to the parameters and properties of the resource type. So this is easy to understand. This is not a define. It's just a resource type, a core element resource type. But how do you normally start? How do I get that type? Here it's named VMNet. It's not there. I have to write it. So people start saying, okay, we do something, but how do we start the best way? So I tried to give now a basic idea, an understanding, a mindset, how you should approach writing types and providers. You might think, okay, there's already documentation available for types and providers. There's the Dan Bodin and Liu book. There's Shit Gary Says blog postings about how to make use of types and providers. What I always found difficulties with these sources of information, that they don't start and build up types and providers. They just have pieces together of a very sophisticated type and provider. And this makes it difficult for people who are new to the stuff to understand the concept, the real basic concept. What is happening? They're hiding some stuff. The first thing you want to check, well, is there a module available already? Yeah, we got that. The next thing, so there's no module available, so we write stuff by ourselves. The next thing, the application you are about to configure. You want to check for the application, whether there's something like a command line tool, whether there's an API, so whether there's some kind, an interface where you can put in information and read information about its state. The output is something you would like to have in structured data. So structured data would be the most optimal thing you can have. And please, plain text is also something a machine can render and is similar to structured data. It doesn't have to be JSON, XML, or JSON-X, or YAML, or whatsoever. When you have found out, okay, these are the commands I can make use of. This is the way how I can get individual informations. This is the way how I can change specific settings. Then you're on to the next task. And you say, okay, now I'm going to do a type. The type is just the pure description of what you write down when you declare it in Puppet. It's the Puppet DSL description. So see the user resource type. What does the user resource type has? He has something, it's always the same pattern, user ID. You want to ensure the user being present or absent. So these are the things you now do within the type. You describe what parameters, what properties are available for that specific configuration. It's not that hard. You can just begin. You can just say, I have a new type available, making use of the Puppet Type API. And this is now an example for a really, really very, very silly example, because I wrote a resource type here that is capable of managing the presence or absence of a file, and it can manage its content, full stop, nothing else. Why is it silly? There is already a file resource type. But that's a huge bloated one from Puppet itself. I try to make it a more simpler approach. You want to have these types available on the systems, which means you have to plug in them, which means you have to put them into the lib directory of your module, where you otherwise just configure and install your application. Now you want to manage certain artifacts, so you put it into the lib Puppet type directory. The file name has to comply with the type name. In this case, it's the my_file type. Yes, it's Ruby. That's not that of a problem. The problem we have around here when we do resource types by ourselves, types are in a flat namespace. So types have just a name. And you might think, okay, where is now this DB type coming from? Is it from the Oracle, the PostgreSQL, the MySQL? Is it from MongoDB? I don't know. So please, when you do types by yourself, make them individual and as easy recognizable as possible. Give them a proper name so everybody understands what does it manage. Make it obvious to the users. The next thing you have inside a type is properties and parameters. And there's just one major difference. A property is something you can modify. The user ID, the content of a file. A parameter is something that changes the behavior. What should my provider later on do? So there's, for example, manage home. There are some meta parameters like require, before, subscribe, notify. They don't do something with how is a change done on the system. They are more meant for the DSL itself. In this case, manage home is something that even influences the provider underneath, that it should be run with a certain parameter. I forgot about it, -m, I suppose. So now you have to add the properties and the parameters. The first property you definitely want to add is name. Name being the name var. So you can have different titles within the catalog, within the Puppet description language, saying this is a nice file I want to manage, and you have a name bar where you specify this is the path where I find the file. You can do some validation. This is the most simplest validation, and it's only working on Linux and not on Windows. Just starting with a slash, that's all I want to, that's everything I need. I'm happy with that validation. And the next property I have then, something that my type and provider can change. This is the content. And I'm specifying the content just existing of characters only. No numbers, no dots. At least it should start with it, regular expressions. I'm bad at regular expressions. I'm very sorry about that. And then you're done with the type. That's all. So what is the difficult thing now with this type? Yeah, you just have to use it. OK, make an example. The myFile resource type. I specify within the title the name of the file I want to manage. I'm saying it's ensure present, and it has a content. I'm good. I'm done. The master will even compile. Everybody's happy. Hey, we have a catalog. Yeah, but now it's the agent side that want to work on the catalog. And the agent now is missing the provider. It says, oh, this resource type you have declared here does not have a suitable provider. To be honest, there is not even one provider available. We haven't written it yet. The type is finished now. Now let's head over to the providers. What is it that the providers do? The providers know about the application and their commands, their options, the parameters they need for certain things. Maybe it's even doing something where the author of that software gives you some kind of Ruby libraries. Would be even better, because then you can stay inside of Ruby and can change the system accordingly. And the provider starts with the same pattern. It says Puppet type what? We had Puppet type already. It was a few slides ago. It was the header of the type. Why do we have the same header? It's not the same header. It's the object we have here. It's the object of type myFile, and this object has a specific method. And this method is built into Puppet, and this is the provide method. So now this provider provides a method, in this case it's the Ruby method, to the type. You have to specify it again, you have to put it again in a specific location, put it into your module, you need to plug in sync, every agent needs to have the provider, otherwise he can't not work on the catalog. And you put it in Puppet provider, the name of the type is a directory, and then you specify which method name is it and use that name as the file name for the provider. In this case, it's the ruby.rb file. There is missing some stuff you will find on many, many resource types, MK resource methods. I omit that for a certain purpose. MK resource methods does a lot of stuff in the background, and I don't like, because I don't understand providers quite properly, so I don't want things to be done hidden in the background. So I omit the MK resource methods. And then maybe you want to have commands that you need run. Then you can specify that this provider requires a specific command. This is the has command method, where you specify, take a look, there is, in case that there is the right-hand side of that command, then I have a new object available, a symbol available, that knows about this command and knows how to run it. As you can see, I don't specify a path. So this provider is running as standard root environment. I just have to maybe extend the environment, specifying for a certain reason the home directory and just another environment variable. This has command, when you run the symbol 1vnet in this case, this is already a wrapper, not around Exec, but it takes care on error handling, error messages. It does everything for you. So it's already something hidden, but I think this is still quite obvious what is happening and what is that you're doing around here. Okay, going back to the example with the myFile thing. What is it? We had the type, we had a name bar, and we had the content property. What is it that we have to do? We have to set the properties. We have to manage the property in our provider. So for the property, we have two different things. We have a getter and we have a setter. This is the core concept of Puppet. This is the idempotency. Know how to read something and know how to change something without doing destructive configuration management. Okay, let's do the definitions. The first one is the getter. It just reads something. In this case, it's pure Ruby. We say, open a file. Which file do I have to open? Just ask the resource type for its name bar. Then you have the information. OK. And the second one, with the equal sign, this is the setter. This is the logic how you can change content. So I'm not deleting the file and recreating it with the proper content. I'm just saying, OK, change the content of the file. And the same is something you want to do when you manage your application. You just say, don't remove everything and build it up from scratch. You want to have the idea on how can I change a certain artifact. That's not all. You need a few more things, 3 more things. Because this is for reading and changing, for existing stuff. But when you start, you don't have anything existing. The file is not there. So I have to create it in the first place. Or I set ensure to absent, so I have to remove it. So Puppet needs to know when do I have to create or remove, and when do I have to use the getter and the setter. Easy. 3 more methods. Create, destroy, exists. Create is just the logic, OK? Create is done when Puppet finds the resource type does not exist on the system. So what I want to do on the system is not yet there. This is checked in the exist method. When the exist method says nothing is here, then Puppet will go directly to the create method and saying, OK, I'm going to create this configuration object that you want to manage with Puppet. And I do everything. I even put inside the, where do I have it? I just create the file. That's it. I just create it. Everything else is done by the getter and the setter. If I want to remove it, I'm telling him, OK, this is the way how I can remove a certain artifact. In this case, it's file.delete. Just remove the file. Is that still difficult? Who believes that's still difficult? This can't be true that I made that with a few couple of slides, you understanding types and providers. But that would be really great. If you get the picture, that's really awesome. So what is it that you want to do with types? And what is it that you would never like to do with types? What you don't want to do, please not do it. Check the Puppet site for restricted, reserved words. Don't reuse meta parameters require before subscribe notify. So Puppet should now know, OK, which one is it? Is it the meta parameter or is it the parameter local to this file? Why do you want to disturb your users? What is it now? Is it local to the provider or the type, or is it the general meta parameter? We want to get rid of exec. So please don't run exec inside Ruby. So having the %x or having the exec method, and it just opens up a shell and we do something, and oh, you have to take care on exit codes, on standard out and standard in, so yes, lots of works to do for you. Yes, you can do that, but yeah, would you like to change the window and space shuttle being in orbit? Not really, I suppose. What is it that you want to do? You want to have a type, or maybe only a provider, because there already exists a type, and you want to extend the type. Think about somehow you sit there and this weird company that gets you the application says, yeah, we have done something absolutely fabulous. We have done something like a new packaging system, with which you can install our application absolutely easily. And say, OK, package. Wait, there is a package resource type built in Puppet. It's already there. So you don't have to write the type. You just need to write the provider, so the command logic. So what is this new packaging system meant to be used? So how do I install, uninstall, check that the package exists? This is the thing you will do in your own. It's just a provider. Or you do a type and a provider. Always take care on what is it that you want to manage. Always take care on, are there things that I can only manage initially and never change afterwards? It's also possible. In this case, you will you will provide the setter to not do anything, either do a warning or do a fail, but don't change anything because it's not possible. What's another benefit of having types and providers? What's the benefit of making use of the core concept of Puppet? Well, you have application in version 5. The vendor produces new application in version 7, and he says, you have to upgrade by the end of the year, otherwise you won't have support. Well, okay, but we need to run that version 5 system for quite some time. And the vendor tells you, and by the way, we have changed the way how you have to configure the application. Wow, now think about exec resource types in your Puppet code. What is it that you're going to do? If, then, else, case. Whoa, having everything in there 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. And the data you provide must be slightly different. Wow, now you have 2 different data sources, whether it is meant for version 5 or meant for version 7. That's not really nice. So with Puppet, you have the possibility of having 1 resource type and different providers. And within the providers, you can check, for example, that this provider identifies itself only being valid when it finds a certain version of that application, so it isn't used otherwise. So the agent side, when it works on the catalog, can make a decision. It just asks the providers, who of you is responsible for this resource type? And both say, wait, let me check. The first one says, no, I'm for version 7. And the other one, yes, I'm for version 5. So here's the code base I have to run. What is it that I should do? So far more easy. Think about different operating system. You have something you want to do on different operating system, and a different operating system, this weird application has to be used in another way. Yeah, then you have a provider for Debian. You have a provider for Red Hat-based systems. You have a provider for Solaris-based system. That's absolutely fine. Your Puppet code will not change. KISS, keep it simple. It's still the same Puppet code, and you can use it in different ways. Why do we want types and providers? Well, we have enough types and providers for everything that is related to open source. MySQL database, MySQL user, PostgreSQL database, lots of stuff around. Sometimes types and providers are not the right concept. Think about Apache vhost. So this is just a defined resource type because we reuse existing resource types. But for example, an enterprise application where I say, oh, I don't find a module around. There is none from Puppet, either supported or unsupported or enterprise only or open source. I don't find anything. My colleague doesn't have anything ready I can use for me. Maybe the vendor forbids to configure the application via changing configuration files. It says when you want to have support, you're only allowed to change things via command line interface. Oh, you're doing execs again. Yes, I see them, growing numbers of exec. Chained exec resources. Oh my God. Which state do we have when one of these 25 exec resources failing? We don't know which one. Oh, we can look at the error. Yeah, it's okay. The example, of course, was valid until yesterday. Because, yeah, I know, but it decided to not change that. Because it was a long time an issue. And this is just an example. So there is now a module. I hope it's supported from IBM. I haven't checked that out, for managing IBM WebSphere. But there are other tools. There's Oracle. There's DB2. And there's even SAP, HANA, whatever you may think about, enterprise application. So from this stage on, I can only say, dear enterprise software producers, give us code to manage your application in a way that we receive support from you for your application, but not insist on using 30 tools for managing 24 applications. We have one tool. We have chosen for using Puppet for managing everything. So we need the code base that we have the possibility of running an enterprise solution and still have support from the producer of the software that he knows, okay, he just needs to ask, are you using Puppet DSL code to configure our application? And we're saying, yes, this is the Puppet code. Have a look on it. He says, yes, awesome, you're using our resource type. So we can definitely help you in case of troubles. Yeah, but resource types, providers. It's not Puppet DSL. Oh my God. What is it that I have here? RUBI? Has anyone heard of that? I don't know. Seems to be something completely new. Oh, I have to again learn something new. Hey, what is it that we're supposed to do here? Who's claiming to be some kind of DevOps? Oh, now I've shocked everybody. Nobody's raising his hand. Okay. It doesn't mean that just dev get access to prod systems. No, it also means for us ops people that we have to change, re-identify us. What is it that we're doing? We have to learn new stuff. This is the nice thing within this industry, that you never stop learning new stuff. There's always changes. Would you like your job when you do 24 years, 44 years, always the same? I change DNS entries on our live platform. It's 80,000 nodes. I start on Monday this week, and hopefully I finish by next month. I don't know. I would start screaming and run away. So yes, it's Ruby. And there are lots of tools around that support even people without any knowledge of coding at all to learn and understand the basics of Ruby. Puppet did an article, an interview with me a couple of weeks ago, and they asked me about what is that the fun stuff about you that nobody knows. So now everybody knows, yes. So I've never done anything in IT. So yes, I worked in IT, but I never studied or did some computer science stuff. Originally, I'm an aircraft mechanic. Hey, when an aircraft mechanic can understand Ruby, you can do it too. That's not that of a problem. So what's the first thing you want to do? Well, I have a system around here. So what is it? I need to learn Ruby. The first thing you want to do, don't mess your system Ruby. Use tools like RVM or RBenv, which will give you a Ruby installation and user space. So if you mess that up, you just delete a directory in your home directory, and you're good. And you can restart from scratch. So you can't destroy your whole system just by trying around Ruby. You might want to have some gems. You might want to use of bundler, which is something like it's not really a change root. It's just a library extension, so you don't have to install everything into your base Ruby installation. Go for Verbal. It's an IRB extension that gives you syntax highlighting and tab completion. So you write a string, quote it. A dot, why a dot? Ruby is fully object-oriented. The string is the object, and this object has a method. And it gets prepared by having the dot, and then you hit tap. And then you get all the methods that Ruby knows about. How can I deal with that object? I can convert it to an array. I can convert it to a JSON. I can chomp it and chop it, for example. Making use of these, and don't forget about pry. Who knows about pry? Just a couple of people. Let's say it's an inline debugger for Ruby, which allows you to set breakpoints. It opens up an IRB. That is why I'm insisting in Verbal and having the tab completion. It lets you inspect everything you have set variables, whether the function returns, whether a test returns some valid data or not. And when you're happy and say, oh, this is not the error in that line, you just type exit, and it continues until it comes to the next breakpoint. I really recommend pry for developing purpose. Please try to remove the pry lines when you want to put it into production. Otherwise, your master will say, oh, I need for the exit here to continue compiling the catalog. How to use Verbal? Yeah, just add them to your home directory IRB-RC file, saying I require Verbal, and you just say Verbal init and Verbal in colorize, and then everything is set. And then you restart your IRB, and you will recognize, oh, I have tab completion, and I have colorization. This is really nice. So where do I find more information about types and providers? Well, first, of course, this talk. Then there's the book, the standard book, Types and Providers. It's not really a book, it's a booklet. Booklet. It has more the size of a comic than a book. But when you could put everything regarding types and providers into a small booklet size of a comic, and everything is inside, that can't be that difficult. Go for Gary Laritza's blog. There are some other blogs which try to explain and do some other ideas around types and providers. Go for the documentations. Puppet has documentation regarding custom types, regarding provider development. Yes, of course, they don't follow this easy concept that I have here. They make use of MK resource methods. They want to show you the full stack like self-instances, so you can run a Puppet resource VM network, full stop, and you get listed everything. This is not what we have done here. We said, hey, it's enough for us to set it in the Puppet code. We don't just want to read all occurrences of it. This is something you will do later on. First, understand the basic concepts, and then extend everything. Don't try running for, what was it, Mount Everest directly within 5 minutes from bottom to top. This is something you will never make, unless when you're arrived upstairs, I suppose you will just fall out dead. So I don't like you to become dead. Please, stay with us. We need you. Who has attended yesterday, the last talk? Tim Seenel. Nobody. Ah, one. Okay. Tim gave an insight on how Atlassian manages their tools with an REST API, I suppose it is. So these are already very, very nice done types and providers. But nice done means also they have a certain level of complexity. But dig for these if you say, oh, I can't run commands, I have to use a REST API. Go look for the Atlassian modules. Go look for Tim Talks. It's already uploaded because he did the talk already in Sydney, I suppose. So a short summary. What is it that I want to show you? And hopefully I got it to you. The exec resource type is not meant for configuring your system. It's meant for running something one time only. Generate something, full stop. And never ever do it again. I hope I proved you that types and providers are not that difficult. They're fairly easy. The types is the DSL, full stop. How should I spell that when I write Puppet code? And the provider is which commands do I have to run? Finished. Yeah, but it's Ruby. Yeah, but Ruby is not that difficult to learn. Start with IRB, play around with it. Use the prygem for debugging, use RBenv or RVM for not messing with your system. Ruby installation, the benefit is when you want to install extensions, you don't need to be root to your system. And please start doing configuration management the right way. Use the bare basic power concepts of Puppet, how to extend your system. Thank you. So looking down here means we have 4 more minutes. If you put easy questions on me, I might answer up 8 to 10. If you do difficulties, we can do 1 or 2 only.
Back on slide 30, I think it was in the setter.
Let me see whether I get there fast.
Yeah. It looked like there was a parameter being passed in a value in def content in the bottom there. I was a little confused as to what that was.
The value in this case is the value of the content parameter, content property, sorry. So when you specify content being set to the value foobar, this is the content that you have inside of that value.
Thank you.
Sorry for not being very clear about that. Yeah. Okay. Which slide is wrong next? If you get every error, let's see, maybe you get a beer.
The talk so far, and no, mine is not saying any of your slides are wrong.
Okay.
I was curious about the namespacing. You said the namespacing is flat, but I know with defined types you can specify, namespacing however you'd like, or based on your module, things like that. Is there any way to do namespacing with types and providers?
Not that I'm aware of. Just specify a proper name. I haven't tried it when you use a resource type name and specifying something like Oracle : DB. I don't know whether this is working. This is something I would have to find out. The best thing you can do is give them proper names so are easily identifiable what is it that they are doing. The difference between the defined resource types. The defined resource types you mostly refer to the standard where they are somehow a manifest next to initpp. And then you say this is not a class, but a define in the namespace of that module. So you have to prefix it with the namespace of the module. It's not another way of namespacing it. Are you aware that the concat is not a resource type? Concat is a define already that is located in initpp. So it's just the basic class, and it's not a class, it's a define, full stop. Maybe they've changed at a newer version, but switch to older version and you will find manifest initpp in the contact module just being a define. There was one more over there.
Sorry. Do you have anything similar for a standard out, like ENC, using ENC data? Because pretty much you can extract the data through ENC and then pass it on key variables, right? Okay,
so the ENC external nodes classifier. So you're classifying your nodes. Hopefully you're only declaring classes for the nodes. Yeah, maybe you do variables. But this is something you consume inside the manifest. So when the master compiles the catalog. So the resource type might have access to variables. Yes. But normally you say it that way, that you say, okay, this is the declaration of the resource type, and you specify, for example, content is set to a variable. And this is replaced while the master compiles the catalog. The provider, on the other hand, is run afterwards on the agent when the agent works on the catalog. So what is it that you provide when you say, when you have something inside the ENC? What is it that you have there?
Pretty much the content I'm talking about, right? I mean, the parameters which is generated as part of ENC. The problem is, how do you process with getters and setters using a standard out? I don't want to read a file. Reading a file is an overhead again, right? I don't want this 10,000 files now in the organization to be opened and read for various configurations.
So you have data in the ENC, and while compiling the catalog, this data gets somehow set to a variable and get replaced while compiling the catalog. So I don't know what you want to do within the type and the data that you get.
Okay, let's go back, right? Rather than content reading as a file, do you have something to read as a standard out? I don't want to put a file overheads, opening up a file and closing a file.
But you have no standard out or standard in when you work on the master compiling a catalog.
That's what I was saying. That's where we end up using ENC for that purpose. So you have the same structure, and we use the ENC parameters to generate what we wanted, and you just process it as a standard out.
We should have a discussion on that afterwards. Later on, for everybody else who's having questions, I will be at the booth from now on until the end of the conference. So if anybody is still confused by what I said, or I am confused what you have been asked, please show up at the booth. I hope I can clarify it for everybody. Thank you.